Tonight on NewsCenter. Just hours to go until Koreans head to the polls for the 20th parliamentary election. Candidates running in the race make last-minute appeals to win the hearts of the voters. Race is too close to call in many more electorates than expected. Scenes from the campaign trail, we have a team coverage. As North Korea watchers try to make sense of the latest series of North Korean defections to the south, Seoul government warns last week's mass defection of 13 North Korean workers from China may not be the last of such kind if Pyongyang continues its current path. And the Taeguk Warriors 2018 World Cup qualifying path unveiled. Korea will face Iran, Uzbekistan, China, Qatar, and Syria in the final round for a ticket to Russia. NewsCenter begins right now. It is 9 a.m. in Washington, 2 p.m. in London, and 10 on a Tuesday night here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to our viewers all across the globe. You're watching Arirang News Center. We are just hours away from the start of the 20th parliamentary election in this country. Voters get to cast their ballots at more than 3,500 polling stations across Korea at the crack of dawn, 6 a.m. Korea time, to exercise their right to decide who will take the 300 seats up for grabs in the 20th National Assembly. Now, various factors at play here. Voter turnout, however, is expected to be one of key game changers, especially in the most hotly contested electorates. Another element, which age group will be particularly active in casting ballots. We start our election coverage tonight with Kim Ji-yeon.
Voter turnout is going to be key this year, and a recent survey shows age and party preference could play into who goes to the polls between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Wednesday. A survey of 2,536 eligible voters conducted earlier this month by local pollster Realmeter showed that 30-somethings are more likely to vote than any other age group, followed by 20-somethings.
I tend to look at the party's pledges targeting young people like me, things like youth unemployment and welfare policies to help us support their parents in this rapidly aging society.
After the Seoul ferry incident, I realized the importance of practical pledges. So I'll try to pick the party I think could actually carry them out.
Meanwhile, many respondents in their 60s said they don't want to vote this year.
If only politicians did what they said they were going to do. Nowadays, people only think of themselves. Politicians are the same, only individualism has grown.
The survey also found that the highest percentage support from likely voters went to the main opposition Minjoo Party of Korea, followed by the minor opposition Justice Party, the ruling Saenuri Party, and the splinter People's Party. This election marks the first time in 20 years Koreans get to choose from a multiple number of parties rather than the traditional two-party system. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, as the major parties make their one last push to win voter support, Arirang News political team went out to follow each of the main parties' final day on the campaign trail. First up, our Park Ji-won on the ruling Saenuri Party.
The leader of the ruling Saenuri Party spent the last day of the official campaign period in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province, where nearly half of the nation's voters live. Kim Moo-sung's packed schedule included stops in roughly 20 districts, where he tried to drum up support for the party's candidates. In his final appeal to voters, he promoted the ruling Conservative Party's strength in two main areas, security and the economy.
This general election is a very significant election that will decide the future of the Republic of Korea. I am once again making the appeal to voters that only the Saenuri Party has the capacity to guarantee the nation's security, revive the economy, and create jobs.
Kim also criticized the opposition for blocking the passage of several economy-related bills, including the Service Sector Promotion Act, stressing that only the Saenuri Party can revitalize the economy. The ruling party says its goal is to retain its parliamentary majority, and both the party leader and the candidates have been asking voters to help them get there, saying it is the only way for the Park Geun-hye administration to govern effectively. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Well, the main opposition, the Minjoo Party of Korea, is also making its final appeal to the public. Shin Se-min shares with us how that party is positioning itself.
The main opposition, Minjoo Party of Korea, ratcheted up efforts to solidify its support among voters with friendly greetings, flyers, and reminders of its position as number 2 on the ballot at campaign events across the country. Interim leader Kim Jong-un swept through the southern part of the country, making its way back here to the capital Seoul, the starting point of the party's campaign efforts. Encouraging voters to support the party, Kim said the only solution for curing the country's current economic woes is to vote.
In order to shift the paradigm of the current economy, the ruling party needs to be replaced, and only your valuable vote has the power to do so.
The interim leader also repeated the talking point that Wednesday's election will be a referendum on the current administration's failure to boost the economy. As the 2-week campaign period wraps up, the party is facing the prospect that it could end up with a little less than 100 seats in the 300-seat National Assembly. But Kim said he has no regrets about how the campaign was run and encouraged the party to keep its fighting spirit till the end. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And last but not least, the newly minted People's Party is the latest to mix it up with the other major parties as it tries to spread the vision for a multi-party system. Our Ji Myung-gil joins that party's celebrity politician and his team out on the trail.
People's Party co-leader An Chol-soo spent the day in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province, trying to woo voters ahead of the election. He vowed to come up with real solutions for improving people's livelihoods and to change the current two-party system that dominates Korea's political landscape.
If you want to change politics, change the current administration and change your lives. The People's Party is the answer. Please support us.
Meanwhile, co-leader Chun Jung-bae led rallies in the city of Gwangju on the Liberals' home turf to generate support for candidates running in the area.
Given the recent upswing in its popularity, the People's Party is fairly optimistic it could win up to 35 seats at this election.
The party wrapped up its campaign activities with new hope that it can turn the momentum it generated in the liberal stronghold of Jeollado province into broader support in Seoul. It is also seeking to solidify its identity in the minds of voters and further separate itself from the main opposition Minjoo Party after a leadership struggle gave way to the creation of the People's Party earlier this year. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, at the nation's top office, President Park Geun-hye also encouraged the Korean public to exercise their right as citizens of a democratic country by casting a ballot tomorrow. Whatever the outcome, the president hopes the next batch of lawmakers will work to resolve major national issues and serve the people. Our Oh Soo-young brings us this report.
One day ahead of the election, President Park Geun-hye urged the country's 42 million voters to fulfill their civic duty and go to the polls on election day.
부디 20대 국회는 진정으로 국민들을 위해 몸과 마음을 던질 수 있는 진정한 민의의 국회가 되기를 바랍니다. 국민 여러분께서는 이번 선거에서 나라의 운명은 결국 국민이 정한다는 마음으로 빠짐없이 소중한 한 표를 행사해서 진정으로 국민을 섬기고 나라를 위해 일하는 20대 국회를 만들어 주실 것을 당부드립니다.
Speaking at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, the president raised two major problems that Korea is currently facing. One being the weakening of the domestic and global economy, and the other dealing with North Korea's continuous nuclear threats. She said that in light of these issues, the new National Assembly must strive to stabilise the nation and revitalise the economy. She emphasised the importance of passing legislation to create new jobs and boost the economy, saying that when these bills are held up in Parliament, it's the citizens who incur the economic losses. Regarding North Korea, President Park said that its continuous threats are intended to cause disturbances in the south, as well as fracture the order of the international community. She added that Korea will firmly respond to any future provocations. President Park also appealed to the public to stand united and have faith in the government. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
대학 졸업생들을 위한 일자리가 많이 부족한 것 같습니다.
대학생들이 요즘 생계 유지를 위해서 아르바이트를 많이 하고 있는데 최저임금을 조금 높여주셨으면 좋겠습니다.
학교 등록금이 너무 비싸서 대부분의 학생들이 그거에 대한 부담감을 느끼는 것 같아요.
North Korea has released its first response regarding the group of North Koreans that defected to South Korea last week. The regime called it an unprecedented move and called on Seoul to send their North Korean citizens back to Pyongyang. Our Connie Kim reports.
North Korea called the defection of 13 North Koreans an unprecedented abduction, slamming South Korea. Pyongyang's first response to the defection came through the North Korean Central News Agency on Tuesday. The North Korean Red Cross said in a statement that South Korea will face consequences if it does not apologize for the abduction and send back its citizens. Pyongyang's response comes as the defected North Koreans were reported to have links to the North's Ryugyong Hotel. They're said to be the children of leading officials within the North's Workers' Party of Korea and other administrative bodies. The 105-story hotel is the tallest building in North Korea, with an estimated cost of $750 million, but it has not opened since construction wrapped up in 2011. Citing sources in Pyongyang, the online newspaper Daily NK reported Tuesday that the North Koreans had been working abroad for years to fund the hotel's construction and the Workers' Party. The report added that business had been good but started taking a downturn after UN sanctions were imposed on the North last month. The North Korean restaurant where the 13 North Koreans worked is located in the city of Ningbo in Zhejiang province but is now closed. The group is reported to have flown to South Korea from a country in Southeast Asia after leaving China on April 6th. Pressure on North Korean restaurant workers to send cash to the regime was one of the reasons why they chose to flee to North Korea. In addition, North Korea's Ministry of State Security has reportedly sent surveillance teams to China in an attempt to tighten its monitoring of workers abroad. 342 North Koreans defected to South Korea in the first 3 months of this year, a jump of 17.5% from the same period last year, and suggesting a recent increase in instability within the regime.
South Korea does not usually announce defections in order to protect the defectors' safety, marking the announcement of the group defection unusual. Seoul says announcements about future defections will be made depending on their safety. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Seoul is hosting 2 sets of high-level talks, one with the U.S., another a three-way between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo next week. Topping the agenda, continued enforcement of sanctions on North Korea. Now, as the effects of international sanctions on the regime are becoming more apparent, the atmosphere of the meetings are expected to be closely watched by many around the world. Kwon Jang-ho has this report.
Seoul's Foreign Ministry confirmed on Tuesday that the Deputy Chief of the National Security Office, Cho Tae-yong, will be meeting with his US counterpart, Tony Blinken, on April 20th in Seoul for a high-level strategic dialogue. This is the second round of talks since Presidents Park and Obama agreed at a bilateral summit last October to increase cooperation in response to North Korea's provocations. Since then, the UN Security Council passed a landmark resolution putting its strongest ever international sanctions on the regime. Its continued enforcement is set to be a main talking point.
South Korea and the U.S. both currently have a strong belief that to change North Korea's attitude, we need a strong foundation of international cooperation to strictly enforce the UN Security Council resolution and put strong pressure on North Korea.
Observers say the possible deployment of a US THAAD advanced missile defense system could also be discussed. The talks will come on the back of another trilateral vice-ministerial meeting between South Korea, the US, Japan a day prior. The Foreign Ministry has said these talks will be the continuation of discussions held at the Trilateral Summit in Washington, D.C. Although regional and global issues regarding healthcare and climate change are also on the agenda, they will likely play second string to the North Korean issues. It's been over a month since the UN resolution was passed, but compared to previous sanctions, its effects are being more keenly felt by the regime.
The latest carpet sanctions covering almost all economic activity, along with much greater cooperation from China, has meant that the difficulties that North Korea is facing are on a different scale than before.
South Korea, the US, Japan will be looking to use the upcoming meetings to further solidify cooperation and ramp up more pressure on the North. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Now, meanwhile, North Korea's top diplomat is traveling to New York next week. Official purpose of trip to sign the landmark Paris Agreement on climate change. But there's extra attention on what else could take place on the sidelines in response to the recent UN sanctions imposed on the regime. Our Kwon So-ah looks into the possibility of such extra meetings.
North Korea's Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong is expected to visit the UN headquarters in New York next week to take part in the signing of the Paris Agreement. The landmark deal on climate change was reached in December last year by almost 200 nations at the Climate Change Conference in France, with a North Korean delegation in attendance too. Lee's trip is gaining more attention for other reasons, though, as it'll be his first visit to New York since last month's adoption of the strongest ever UN resolution against Pyongyang for its nuclear and missile provocations. According to a source familiar with North Korea, Pyongyang may want to show the international community the sanctions aren't having an impact on the regime. There's also speculation Lee could seek talks with his U.S. counterpart, John Kerry.
With the North Korea recently stressing dialogue with the U.S., it could be that the North is trying to push ahead with a meeting. Ri's visit to the UN is increasing the chance that the two foreign ministers could meet.
Although it's difficult to say whether the U.S. would actively engage with North Korea for talks at this point, the expert added Washington's doors are open for peace talks, which was also mentioned by Kerry at the Group of Seven meeting in Hiroshima this week.
What I want to make clear is that South Korea and the US share the view that denuclearization is the priority when it comes to talks with North Korea. As far as I know, Secretary Kerry's statement was based on that same stance.
Meanwhile, a more likely meeting in New York could take place with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, as was the case during the North Korean diplomat's previous two visits, but the UN has yet to offer any indication of that. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The International Monetary Fund has cut Korea's growth outlook for this year to 2.7%. That's down by 0.2 of a percentage point from its January projection. Now, the IMF said that the slowing demand in China will continue to take a toll on the Korean economy. For next year, it expects Korea to grow 2.9%, also a cut from an earlier forecast of 3.2%. As for the world economy, the IMF says recovery momentum has weakened due to increasing financial volatility and falling commodity prices. Now, it predicts the global economy to expand 3.2% this year, down from its previous projection of 3.4%. Korea and China have agreed to extend their currency swap deal that's set to expire next year. Now, this is expected to not only help Korea get better prepared for possible future financial crises, but it's being seen as yet another bilateral move that could help strengthen its relationship with China. Our Kim Jung-soo has the details.
Korea and China agreed on Monday to extend their 2011 currency swap deal that's scheduled to end in October 2017. The current value of the swap deal, which sits at $60 billion, is also subject to a possible expansion. The agreement was finalized by Finance Minister Yu Il-ho and People's Bank of China Governor Zhao Xiaochan on the sidelines of the Inter-American Development Bank meeting in the Bahamas. The currency swap deal between the two nations first began in 2009 and was previously extended in 2011. Under the deal, when Korea depletes its foreign exchange reserves, which currently sits at $365 billion, it can sell a specified quantity of Korean won to China's central bank. In return, Korea can receive an equal amount of Chinese renminbi at the prevailing market exchange rate. Later, at a designated time, the payments are returned according to a fixed exchange rate. Experts say these swaps can help strengthen trade relations between the two countries.
Although the value of the swap agreement only amounts to a sixth of Korea's total foreign reserves, I think it's best to understand the extension as a symbol of the strong economic and political alliance between the two nations.
The extension of the swap deal is also expected to help Korea insure itself against an increasingly unstable global financial market, which faces possible hikes in the value of the US dollar and the Japanese yen. Kim Jung-soo, Arirang News.
By the year 2030, more than 3 million people in Seoul will be 60 years of age or older. In other words, in about 14 years, the Korean capital will become the 8th oldest city in the developed world. Our Kim Min-ji shares with us a new report and how such changes could have a knock-on effect on spending patterns.
Seoul is on track to becoming one of the fastest aging cities in the world. It's expected that over 30% of Seoul's population, or roughly 3.2 million people, will be aged 60 or over by 2030. That's a significant jump considering that the corresponding figure stood at 18%, or some 1.8 million people last year. The 2030 figure puts Seoul in 8th place among cities in other major economies. Topping the list will be Tokyo at 13.2 million, or 35% of its population. Osaka will be second on the list, followed by New York. The 60-plus age group is forecast to grow by more than a third in developed countries, from 164 million in 2015 to 222 million in 2030. They are also expected to generate more than 50% of urban consumption growth. With this shift in demographics, it's expected that the industrial structure will also change. Consumption is shifting to services already, with spending heavily concentrated on healthcare among aging consumers in developed regions.
Companies will be able to target the niche market of the silver industry by coming up with services that meet the needs and wants of the elderly population beyond the health and welfare sectors.
Now, at the same time, experts add that it's somewhat of a double-edged sword for Korea, which also suffers from an exponentially low birth rate, standing at 1.24 per woman for 2015. Experts say an aging population coupled with a low birth rate poses a threat to the nation's economy, as it would lead to a shrinking workforce. They say it would also lead to increased spending on health and welfare, as well as policies to prop up the birth rate. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
A new plan to create more jobs. The Korean government has unveiled a 5-year plan focused on industry-university cooperation. What's unique about this plan is that it encourages startups and includes not only university graduates, but more specifically in getting those with master's or PhDs involved. Kim Hye-sung has this report.
The Korean government has unveiled a new plan that aims to tackle the country's youth unemployment problem by encouraging more young people to start their own businesses. Under the Industry-University Cooperation 5-year plan proposed by the Ministry of Education Tuesday, the goals fall into 3 different categories. One is expanding industry-university cooperation to include the culture, arts, and content sectors rather than just focusing on manufacturing and engineering. Attracting more master's and doctoral degree holders into startups is also part of the plan. And the Education Ministry expects the plan to create 50,000 jobs by 2020.
We believe that tapping into more technology and biohealth talent is important for startups to succeed in the 21st century, which requires sophisticated expertise in ICT.
Lastly, the government will create a university-wide startup fund to financially support young entrepreneurs and provide a safety net to those who fail first time around. Some academic circles see it as a win-win situation.
I think this is a very positive move. Our bridge program, a startup created by college graduates a year and a half ago, was a huge success. The government's proposed 5-year plan will help create more of these startups and provide opportunities for students.
The Education Ministry says it is cooperating with 9 other ministries, including Ministry of Strategy and Finance, to inject a total of $1 billion into the plan by the year 2020. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Well, staying on the topic of higher education, leaders of global research universities gathered in Seoul for an annual forum. Now, the topic was to improve higher education and collaboration between research universities. Our Lee Ji-won was on site.
In the age of the creative economy, research universities should practice student-centered education to produce talented graduates who take the initiative to define and solve problems, thereby producing social and economic value. This is the educational philosophy outlined by top Korean university KAIST, or the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, in a speech by the university president during the 2016 International Presidential Forum on Global Research Universities in Seoul on Tuesday. Kang Sung-mo also emphasized the importance of helping turn students into entrepreneurs as a way to generate growth in an era when the country is facing a sluggish economy and social problems such as the low birth rate and aging population.
Research universities must help students gain a deeper understanding of their subject and then help them translate their knowledge and research achievements into real-world values. For instance, KAIST professors upload their lecture materials on the web for students to review before a lecture and use the lecture time to debate and share ideas.
The forum seeks to help global research universities work together to improve higher education by inviting university leaders to share their expertise and initiate new collaborations, in addition to strengthening existing partnerships.
Some of them, like Tenyon, we already our strategic partner. Yeah, but some other ones we are learning. You know, that's why I come here, because there's some old friends, there's some new friends that we want to make. So we, for example, Aalto University. They're very interesting. They want to do interdisciplinary research.
The Minister of Science, ICT and Future Planning visited the forum to thank the participants and encourage them to continue global efforts to nurture next-generation leaders. The minister highlighted its close partnership with domestic universities and promised that the ministry will continue to make its utmost effort to upgrade schools into the best in the world. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
More or less modest counterparts, experts say. South Korea has drawn in the Asian final qualification round for the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia. Now, they are in Group A, facing off against some familiar opponents, as well as some big kickers. Our Lee Min-young has more on the draw.
For the 9th consecutive time since the 1986 Mexican World Cup, South Korea is trying to reach football's premium competition. In the draw held Tuesday in Kuala Lumpur, 56th-ranked South Korea was paired with 42nd-ranked Iran, 66th-ranked Uzbekistan, and 81st-ranked China, Qatar at 83rd, and 110th-ranked Syria in Group A. Group B features Australia, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, Iraq, and Thailand. The final preliminary round will be held next year from September 1st to September 9th. It is expected that Korea will be contesting with Iran, the qualifier with the highest rank among the member countries of the Asian Football Confederation, for the first place within Group A. The winner and runner-up of each group will qualify for the 2018 FIFA World Cup. South Korea's record against Iran up until now stands at 9 wins, 7 undefeated, and 12 losses, which places Korea in a disadvantageous position. However, as Korea met the 66th-ranked Uzbekistan at the third pot instead of the so-called strong player of the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Korea seems to have a high chance of winning. Korea has never lost against Uzbekistan in all 12 matches since the 1994 Hiroshima Asian Games. Korea has played in every World Cup since 1986, and they were semi-finalists at the 2002 competition when they co-hosted with Japan. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
Attack ads have become a staple of American presidential elections, and this year a majority of the ads have one thing in common: their target. Bruce Harrison is live in the studio with me. Now, Bruce, it should come as little surprise that the bulk of the spending on critical ads is targeted at Donald Trump.
Well, you know, he is a front runner on the Republican side, which makes him a natural target, just like Clinton is on the Democratic side. But the thing about this campaign is that people look like they're willing to spend money regardless of their political affiliation just to make sure Trump is blocked from getting into the White House. The New York Times reports that more than half of the record spending this year on attack ads, some $132 million, is being used just against Trump. An official of the company that analyzed data on ads told the Times this spending is unprecedented because Trump is being attacked by his primary and general election opponents, as well as groups who simply want to deny him the nomination. Trump lost several recent primaries to challenger Texas Senator Ted Cruz, and an Associated Press poll shows he's the most unpopular candidate. Trump's now lashing out at the primary system.
It's a dirty system. And only a non-politician would say it, because I don't care. Look, if it doesn't happen, I'm here for one reason: make America great again. That's the only reason.
Though his campaign momentum has slowed a bit, Trump has withstood most of the attacks, and he has the support of more than 50% of likely Republican voters in New York, a delegate-rich state which holds its primary next week. As China steps up media censorship, 2 more foreign news agencies have been blocked on the mainland. Anti-censorship group GreatFire.org reports the websites of Time and The Economist are now suspended. The New York Times reports the censorship most likely followed the publication of cover articles critical of Chinese President Xi Jinping. Under President Xi, the government has tightened control of the internet in China.
Now, Bruce, the mechanism that China uses to control what the Chinese see on the web is called a Great Firewall. Now, apparently its creator ran into some trouble.
Yeah, so the creator of the Great Firewall, he was giving a speech at a university last week, and he tried to show the students a website, but he was blocked. So he circumvented it using a VPN, or a virtual private network, and he's been mocked on the internet for that.
Well, you know, that's the same method that the Chinese use to view, you know, websites such as Facebook and Twitter that's banned in China.
Exactly.
Well, we'll have to wait and see how censorship goes in China.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bruce, thank you so much for that.
No problem.
Time now for a check on what the weather has in store for us. Let's go straight over to our Lee Ji-hyun standing by at the Weather Center. Ji-hyun, today was just lovely here in Seoul. It was nice and warm, and the air was clear. Well, it was one perfect day to spend time outdoors, but the big question is, what about tomorrow? What will the weather look like for those Koreans heading to vote tomorrow?
Well, it's going to rain on election day tomorrow. In fact, the previous 2 general elections saw showers as well.
You know, weather has always played a factor in voter turnout rates. So how much rain are we talking about?
Well, actually, it's been raining in Jeju since this evening. The system is going to spread nationwide by midnight. So overall, the peninsula will get between 5 to 30 millimeters of shower through tomorrow afternoon. Showers will taper and leave behind heavy clouds. And another thing to beware is that there's a slim chance of yellow dust sweeping in after the rain. Temperature-wise, it's going to be similar to today, but double-digit lows to start out, as the daily low here in Seoul will start out at 12 degrees Celsius, and Busan and Jeju will kick off at 14 and 17. And as for the daily highs, Seoul will see a high of 19, while Busan and Jeju will get up to 18 and 21. And it seems like we're going to have a frequent rain over the next 5 days. This weekend should be a wet one as well, but temperatures will not be affected affected by this round of rain. And before I go, today a 61-year-old man was confirmed to have the SFTS virus. It's the first case this year, and the best way to prevent a related infection is to avoid tick bites. So when you're outdoors, do not put your clothes on the grass and be sure to use mats when you sit down. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that is our broadcast on this Tuesday night. Tomorrow, April 13th, is Election Day here in Korea. So for those of you Koreans out there, I'd like to encourage all of you to go out and vote. Your vote will make a difference. I know I will tomorrow. Thank you as always for staying with us, and we'll see you right back here same time tomorrow on NewsCenter.